and we are live right now. But there's that Mexican restaurant on south of the Capitol, next to a hairdressing place, and we used to run call times for people in the basement of that, and so it'd be a mix of a hair salon and the Mexican food. Great Mexican food, great hair salon, but mixing them together in a basement with no windows was horrific.
That sounds
Um,
like a lot.
it was terrible.
A
Um,
lot in the air.
Great members of Congress, great people running for office again, but it was tough. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll get started in 1 minute. Let us know where you're checking in from in the comments. And as my producer, and I hate saying this, but I have to say it. Don't forget to like and restack your post here. I do appreciate it though, so this can get out there and we can move past the noise. Right now, we're running the hashtag Fund Healthcare Stop ICE, and that is even trending on X right now, top 10. And I don't know why Elon lets us do that, but it is. And right now, we are joined by our wonderful guest, Congresswoman Sarah McBride. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Well, how are any of us right now? I'm hanging in there, determined sense of purpose right now. But
Mhm.
I'm here in Delaware where we just had a snowstorm, so I'm snowed in right now still. But I'm so glad to join you.
Yeah, it's so cold out there too. We'll jump into it now. You have a long history of politics, like myself. Now, what made you want to get in politics at all? You went from the Obama White House to state senate to Congress. Like, what were you like? Oh, I definitely this is my calling. Me, it was like there was an internship, and I was like, well, I might as well work with the lieutenant governor. I went on from there. But like, what was it that you're like? I want to do politics. Sounds great to me.
Well, I think you and I both started relatively young, and for me, first started getting interested in politics and government and advocacy as a potential vocation when I was young and
Mhm.
buried deep in the closet. I was scared. I felt alone, and I worried whether the heart of this country was big enough to love someone like me. And I faced really a crisis of hope. And in that crisis of hope, I went searching for solutions. I went searching for examples of our world becoming kinder and more just and more inclusive. I wanted to be an architect when I was a kid originally. And so I used to read books about different buildings around the world. And as I was both looking at those books and searching for hope, I stumbled across books about the Capitol and the White House. And what I started to marvel at was not the buildings themselves or the architecture, but the history that occurred within their walls. Because as I read those books, I saw that the through line of every chapter was the story of advocates, activists, and a handful of courageous and effective elected officials working together to right wrongs, to bring people from the shadows and the margins of society into the circle of opportunity. And for the first time in my life, I found hope. I found hope in the possibilities in our politics. And so I got involved, and I'm glad I did, because politics is obviously not an easy way to make change, but it is the place that has the most capacity to do good on the most number of issues in the most number of ways possible. And I as I grew up and started thinking about what is a fulfilling life, and obviously living authentically was the foundation of that. But beyond that, it was for me the places I see and the change I bring. And this is the place, for as flawed as it is, for as too often toxic and certainly feels broken at times, for all of that, this is still the place where we can do unimaginable good that reverberates not just for our neighbors on a huge scale, but for generations and generations to come. And, at this moment, I think we have to sort of decide whether we genuinely believe in politics and democracy for what they are, as difficult, unfair, hard mechanisms to create change, but the best chance that we have through nonviolent mechanisms to bring about the change that we need. And I'm committed to preserving them and proving that they can still work.
Yeah, and there was a different vibe when Obama was in office, obviously, but there was something about it was different. I never walked around cocky and looked at people as it was like, "What can I do for you? Like, how can I get you connected with somebody to do something for you? Like, how can I pressure someone to get you the healthcare you need? How can I do" like, that's what it was all about. And there's this arrogance and different kind of demeanor that just is it's the ick that I always don't like in DC being there for so long. It's just I don't understand exactly how it took such a hard turn, but it's just different. I really did love, President Obama's staff and the work that he was doing, and he was genuine and real and unbought, and it's a completely different it's disrespect, it's anger, it's mediocre, unqualified, rich white men that think that they own the world, just trying to dominate everything and run around and say, "I want Greenland. Greenland is mine. I want to take this country." And it's just like, you don't have to do it like that. You literally could say, "I want to put more troops in Greenland." Like, you recently went over with the delegation to Denmark as it, talking about Greenland. Can you tell me what that trip was about and the purpose, and what you learn from our allies abroad? Because I, I understand it's a distraction, obviously, from Epstein and from other scandals. The 10 billion his family's made, or 1.4 he's made since being in office in this year or the past year. But, like, what exactly happened on that trip? Because it doesn't seem like foreign policy, it's just madness in my mind.
Well, it really is. I mean, it is without logic, and it is pure, unadulterated performance art
Mm.
on the global stage that has real consequences for other people and for our own country. And I just want to say, before I get to Denmark, to your point, one of the problems we have right now is that Trump and Trumpism is fostering intentionally a crisis of hope in the country. And it leads some to give up on politics entirely. And it leads others to say, well, if politics is no longer a place for progress, then at least it can be a place for entertainment, for visceral comforts. And that is what Trump tries to offer his own supporters, is that visceral comfort. It's the entertainment, it's the angertainment that he provides. And in order for us to not only win elections, not only defeat Donald Trump specifically, but to defeat Trumpism, we have to solve for that crisis of hope. It means when we win, we have to deliver for people, to prove to them that politics can still work for them, that government can respect them and deliver for them, that democracy can deliver for them. And as we talk about democracy here at home, this goes directly into this trip to Denmark. For those of you who aren't familiar, Greenland is part of the larger kingdom of Denmark. Greenland is represented in the Danish parliament, what's called the Folketing in Copenhagen. It also has its own regional provincial parliament in Nuuk, Greenland as well, but it is part of the kingdom of Denmark. And because of that, it is part of NATO, and is part of the constellation of liberal democracies that the United States is not just a part of, but has historically led for the last 80 years since World War II. And what we are seeing by Donald Trump in Greenland, what we're seeing by Donald Trump in Ukraine, what we're seeing with Donald Trump across the globe is an effort to fundamentally remake the global order from a rules-based one that values the sovereignty of individual people and nations, one that values democracy, liberal democracy as an aspiration, to one that is essentially a might makes right in my own neighborhood mentality. One that says a great power in North America, the United States, gets to dictate the Western Hemisphere, that Russia gets to dictate its own sphere of influence, including Ukraine, that China gets to dictate its own sphere of influence in Eastern Asia. A might makes right in my neighborhood foreign policy or global order is not only amoral, it is also one that inevitably leads to conflict between those great powers. Because once you dominate your neighborhood, you're going to want to dominate a larger neighborhood, and eventually you're going to want to dominate the globe. And so this is an incredibly dangerous moment for our global order, for democracy here at home and around the world. And in Denmark, Donald Trump was seeking to not only infringe on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Denmark, he was seeking to fundamentally undermine the NATO alliance, which has been the greatest force for liberal democracy the world has ever known. And what we heard in Denmark was one, real fear. Now, the president has backtracked largely because of how unpopular this move was and the markets crashing. He's backtracked a little bit rhetorically. But when we were there, before that happened, we heard that kids in Greenland were not sleeping at night. We heard from people on the streets about the fear, the indignity, right? They love us. We are, as someone said to us, we are their older brother, their big older brother that they've always looked up to. And right now, the way we are treating them, it's like if our big older brother came home drunk one night and started to abuse us. It is a profound indignity and hurt and pain. And while the president has backtracked and he's sort of claiming there's a framework, let's be clear, Denmark and Greenland were willing to do anything we could conceivably have wanted to last week, last year, last decade, short, of course, of giving up their sovereignty and territorial integrity, which no country would give up. They were willing to have more military presence. They were willing to have economic development. They were willing to do whatever we wanted to do so long as we asked, short of taking over their land. And now the president's backtracking a little bit, but the harm that was inflicted on our relationship still is there. And I hope it's not an irreparable situation. But in a matter of weeks, support in Greenland or in Denmark for the United States, which has sacrificed more people per capita than any other country in the aftermath of 9/11 in Afghanistan, support dropped for the United States from over 80% to 8%. And the NATO alliance, while it survives, is shaken. And I think we have to be crystal clear in this moment that if Donald Trump continues to engage, not just with Denmark, but any of our allies the way he has, he could destroy NATO and destroy the rules-based order that has allowed for liberal democracies to exist peacefully, for all countries to exist peacefully globally without conflict between those great powers.
Yeah, I assume you've seen the videos of Minnesota of Renee Good, Alex Pretty. What are your thoughts about those killings just in general? I personally have worked with law enforcement for years, standing next to President Obama in 2009 on stage at his inauguration, after his first dance with Michelle. Like, getting that close to you're working with Secret Service and every single law enforcement when they had the train ride coming in. I worked on that. So that was every law enforcement agency between Philadelphia and DC and in between federal. So I saw the professionals and the Secret Service agents that I've worked with before, told me like they're trained to never touch their gun, like unless they're going to use it. Like there's just never a chance. And some of them I've spoken with have said, it's horrific and very bad, obviously, for law enforcement to see these videos because it's not. It's untrained, unprofessional, in my opinion. But what are your takes on those videos and what's happening in Minnesota and everywhere else? Obviously,
Yeah. First of all, to your point, ICE and CBP they're not conducting themselves as law enforcement. I mean, what we are seeing is an insult to local law enforcement that obviously we have seen bad behavior in that context, but what we are seeing is an intentional and widespread systemic abuse of constitutional rights by federal agents under DHS right now. And I mean, I think like everyone watching the videos of Renee Good and Alex Pretty's murders, executions in the middle of American streets, I am disgusted and I'm angry. And I think all of us have to be angry about what we are seeing. We have to feel a righteous anger in this moment because this should not be happening under our name. This should not be happening by the federal government. This should not be happening in our streets. And I think what is abundantly clear is that ICE, CBP, DHS at this point has fundamentally destroyed public trust in their institutions. And it's why I was one of the first Democrats to call on the impeachment, call for the impeachment of Kristi Noem. It's why I voted against the DHS funding bill that came before us last week. It's why I will not vote for any kind of measure that gives 1 extra cent to DHS to facilitate what is essentially a paramilitary force in American streets. We have to be strong in this moment. We have to be resolute. The public is on our side because the public has seen with their own eyes that federal agents murdered in cold blood American citizens within our communities, peacefully exercising their right to protest, to observe, exercising their First Amendment and Second Amendment rights.
Mm.
And I certainly hope that my colleagues on the Senate side continue to stand firm against this abuse of power at this inflection point for our country.
And I'm going to have to wrap up soon because I promised your staff.
We've got time. We can go over a little bit because my answers have been long, but I've just been passionate.
No, it's important. I think one of the things that I wanted to definitely talk about was there's so many Republicans using hate to rile up their base. I try to stay away from violent rhetoric always. Like, we're super careful about the words we use, what we say, because we know it has impacts on people. I'll give you some examples. Trump, Mike Johnson, Nancy Mace. I mean, the hate. I just, maybe I grew up in a different world, but I don't understand why they. I mean, obviously they thrive off of, they fundraise off of this hate, but like in private, which drives me bonkers, they don't act this way. It's not, most of them don't act the same way, and they sit there and they talk junk about Trump, and they're aligned with, and then they go on TV and it's like, oh, well, they get off of it. I had to say something about your organization. I mean, like, it's not personal, it's business. And I'm just like, no, we're not friends anymore. Like, what are you talking about? This is not, it doesn't work for me, man. We're not going to go out and get drinks or anything. Like, this is, it's no good. So anyways, like, how can we stop them from using hate to benefit off of what they're doing? Or is that just what they're made of now?
Well, I think that for many of these Republican politicians, their cruelty is the currency of their corruption and their consolidation of power. They are taking advantage of people's genuine curiosity, lack of understanding, questions around a whole host of issues of human diversity, including diversity that I am a part of, in order to score political points, in order to divide this country and misdirect our attention. Because I guarantee you that every single time they say the word trans, look at what they're doing with their grubby hands. I guarantee you in that moment, they're picking the pocket of American workers. They're trying to fleece seniors. They're trying to gut unions. They're trying to cut your health care. It is part of a strategy as old as politics itself. And so, one, we've got to pull back the curtain. Two, we've got to continue to engage on our side in the art of social change and having conversations across disagreement, in creating space and grace for people to grow, in welcoming imperfect allies in order to have the army we need behind us to fight back against the politics of hate and this authoritarian machine. I have obviously been at the center of some of my colleagues' attacks, and it hurt. I mean, it hurts. It doesn't hurt I don't care about the gender specific part of it because I'm confident in who I am. I am I have been through a lot already, and that doesn't bother me. What does bother me, what hurts, is not the gender specific nature of the indignities. It's the clear intention to be mean and to dominate. I mean, that's what bullying is, right? It is an effort. It is an effort to dominate someone else. And when someone takes my name away, my legal name away, and calls me by a different name, it doesn't bother me that they're calling me by a man's name. It's that they're taking my name away from me. And that indignity is real. But I also didn't run for Congress to just make myself the issue. I'm going to use my political capital to defend my constituents, whether they're LGBTQ constituents, immigrants who are constituents, people of color who are constituents, working people who are constituents, people who are on Medicaid who are constituents. My political capital, my time, and my energy is going to be focused on them. And in being on the receiving end of some of those indignities and in holding my head high and maintaining dignity and focus in that moment, if I can provide the public with a very clear contrast, a very clear visual contrast between who the bullies and the bullied are, who is right and who is wrong in this moment. If I can provide that visual contrast, then something good will come from those indignities that I face.
Yeah, you've saved some people that I know, and so I've always been appreciative of that and respect your work. There's this sneer, the look of like innuendo of like, well, and they like to do that. And I know it drives me, Jamie Raskin, like Swalwell, is
Yeah.
mad when they do it because it's all the performance that you said. Um, you know,
Can I actually say something on
yeah,
that? Because I want folks who are watching this to understand a little secret about Congress, and it's not so secret. And that is, to your point, the sad reality for so many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle is that Congress is a reality TV show.
mhm,
And how do you get attention on The Real Housewives? How do you get airtime? It's by throwing wine in someone's face. And that gets you a couple of minutes on an episode. The way you get a season-long story arc is if the person who you throw wine in the face of, if they respond by throwing wine back, because then you get a beef. And that attention in this fierce attention economy is power for those folks, right? The more attention they get, the more they get a platform. And I used to think that that pursuit of attention for these folks was simply an intellectual decision to debase themselves in order to get attention, in order to gain power or fundraise or set themselves up for the next thing. And what I've realized is that it's actually an addiction. One of the most frequent things I hear about some of these members of Congress who are professional provocateurs, not all of them, but some of them, is they were so normal when they got there. And what happens is they get there, they're relatively normal people, reasonable people, and then they go viral nationally for some random reason. Sometimes it's because they were acting moderate, sometimes it's because they were more conservative, sometimes it's because they said something in a passionate way, but they go viral for whatever reason. And we all know that when you go on social media and post a picture of yourself and it gets a couple hundred likes, that's a dopamine hit.
mhm,
But that's like a cigarette puff. If you go viral nationally, that is an instantly addictive high.
yep,
And then these folks, they will just perpetually pursue that next high at all costs, no matter how much they debase themselves and no matter the collateral damage they impose on other people.
mhm,
And it's not an excuse, but it is an explanation because these folks are addicted to the attention, and it is an actual addiction, not some sort of intellectual pursuit of more power. It's a pursuit of a high.
mhm. And when it comes to everybody in Congress, what we do is last year we sent 500,000 letters and made hundreds of thousands of phone calls to Congress directly from their constituents to senators and reps. where they can adjust the letter for them and whatnot. There's people who are down in the dumps right now, like, "Oh, I don't know if they're going to listen to this." What I used to compile for different members of Congress was a fact sheet of like how many calls you get for each category of subjects, and then touch letters that they would want to read and things like that. Um, and in my experience, people who are members of Congress look at that stuff. Is that true? Is it worth people to make these phone calls, go to the town halls, send their letters and whatnot? Like, is it worth it for them?
I absolutely, absolutely. I cannot begin to reinforce for people just how important reaching out to your member of Congress is. I know it sometimes feels like you're shouting into the void, but Scott, to your point, we track, we take note of it. The Affordable Care Act would have been repealed in full in 2017
Mhm.
had it not been for people reaching out to their members of Congress, people showing up and protesting. That made the difference. Right now, we are seeing a dam breaking in Congress, among the public. We are finally seeing business leaders speak out and celebrities that went quiet after the last election start to speak out again in the aftermath of the executions of Renee Good and Alex Pretty. And that is a byproduct of people speaking out, of people posting on social media, of people attending protests. And I think that a lot of what's going on right now in Congress as it relates to the DHS budget and immigration is a byproduct of people calling and emailing their members of Congress, their senators. And I'll say this, I know there's a lot going on. If you can let us know before a vote what your perspective is, that is always incredibly helpful because there's a lot coming. And it is it is often it is often pivotal for members to know where their constituents will be. And that is obviously always more helpful before a vote than after.
To everyone listening and watching across the world, don't forget, let us know in the comments where you're coming in from, tuning in from, and also, of course, like and restack this post. Sam, my editor and producer, if you appreciate that I said that, I want a pat on the back later. We always end every interview with the message of hope. You're one of the best speakers in Congress. People may or may not know that. No pressure on you, but the floor is yours. Let's say that somebody is not living under, a bridge right now. Like they actually are, tracking the news and seeing how horrific these acts are and the abuses of power. And they're like, well, then when's a member of ICE going to get arrested for their crimes? When is the supremacy clause not going to be applicable to what they're doing? When is it, like, it stacks up, and I hear it every single day. Like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. What would you say to people like that who are, hard working Americans who volunteer, who show up, or do digital work because they can't go to marches? Like, what would you say to someone who just right now is like, oh my gosh, this is too much? And what would you say to them? Because I'm
So,
sure that there's some people watching that.
yeah. And not only are they watching, I mean, I think all of us at moments have to find our hope, have to summon our hope. I think sometimes we think hope is an organic emotion, and it is not. Sometimes you have to consciously find it. And for me, two things that give me hope. One is contemporary, one is historic. The first is that as an elected official, one of the blessings of my job is, as important as the online world is, I am forced off of the internet and into communities that vote for people like me and communities that don't vote for people like me. I am forced offline and forced to have conversations with people who disagree with me about the things that we disagree on. And I know I take comfort in that and in realizing that while the algorithms and while social media can influence the world we live in, they are not necessarily representative of it. Because when you go online, you see a small fraction of the population. You see people who either agree essentially 100% with you, or people who disagree with you essentially 100%. And that's the algorithms lifting those perspectives up. And it can lead us into this false perception that politics and persuasion is pointless, that there is no hope for us to convince people of the rightness of our cause because everyone either already agrees with us or is so far gone on the other side that they will never even listen to us. And what I can tell you as someone who engages in politics in communities across my state, which is blue but has deep red parts, we are not as divided as the algorithms make it seem. Persuasion is still possible. And in this moment, we have to decide whether we truly believe in democracy, not in the abstract, not as a talking point, not only when it's going well for us, whether we genuinely believe in it, because democracy can only exist if we maintain our faith in other people's capacity to change. And then the second thing that gives me hope is historic. And that is, when I look at the history books, when I think about all the history that's occurred in the House chamber where I serve, where the House moved in 1857, and I step out of the present that views our history and the progress that we are the beneficiaries of with the hindsight that leads us to believe that it's inevitable. And when you step into the shoes of previous generations, you realize that the reasons for hopelessness now, for all of the challenges we face, pale in comparisons for the reasons of hopelessness throughout our history. You mentioned the Obama era, and I think so many of us came of age, had formative experiences in the Obama era. Many of us, most of us, certainly don't remember a period of time before the 1960s. And over the last 60 years, it has felt like, yes, sometimes Republicans win, sometimes Democrats win, but that we are in the long course of history on this unending cresting wave of cultural momentum. And it felt like if we simply worked for it, if we voted and volunteered, that change was inevitable. And it doesn't feel that way anymore. We can't quite see the light at the end of the tunnel in this moment. But what I take comfort in when you step into the shoes of previous generations, you cannot tell me that the reasons for hopelessness now are greater than the reasons for hopelessness for an enslaved person in the 1850s who had no reason to believe that an Emancipation Proclamation was on the horizon. You cannot tell me the reasons for hopelessness now are greater than the reasons for hopelessness for an unemployed worker during the early days of the Great Depression who had never heard of a New Deal. And you cannot tell me that the reasons for hopelessness now are greater than the reasons for hopelessness for a closeted LGBTQ person in the 1950s who never knew of an America where they could live openly and authentically as themselves without violating the law. They had every reason to give up hope. They had every reason to believe that our politics and our democracy could not deliver for them because it never had. And yet they still summoned their hope. They found the light. They changed the world. And I have to believe if previous generations of Americans could do it, then so too can we.
Be sure to follow Congresswoman Sarah McBride on whatever you're watching or listening to this from. Thank you, Congresswoman, for joining me today. I'm not even going to comment on what you just said. It was beautiful and very welcome in this time, and I guess I needed it too. Everyone, keep your head up. I'll be back with our daily news brief tomorrow morning. Let's all keep moving forward with our arms locked together. Be well, do good, onward. And again, thank you for joining me today. Let's connect again soon.
Thanks, Scott.
Take care.